Lesson 1. Mitosis is one type of cell division. There are two other types: meiosis and binary fission. Mitosis and meiosis are forms of cell division that occur in eukaryotic cells. With the exception of bacteria, all living organisms, plants, animals, fungi, and protists, are composed of one or more eukaryotic cells. Binary fission is the form of cell division that occurs in prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are also called bacteria. Let's briefly compare the three forms of cell division. Mitosis results in two identical cells that have exactly the same genetic information. Meiosis creates special cells called gametes that enable sexual reproduction. These cells contain half the genetic information of the original parent cell. Binary fission, like mitosis, also produces two genetically identical cells. Now that we've looked at the three types of cell division, let's return to mitosis. Mitosis is how single-celled eukaryotic organisms, like the tiny paramecium shown here, reproduce themselves. Mitosis is also how multicellular organisms grow and develop, from a single-celled fertilized egg into an adult made up of many cells. And mitosis is how new body cells are created, body cells like the red and white blood cells shown here. In multicellular organisms, new body cells are constantly being produced. These new cells replace damaged and worn-out cells and respond to inflammation and infection. Let's review what we've just learned about mitosis and the other two types of cell division. Mitosis is one type of cell division. The other two types are meiosis and binary fission. Mitosis and meiosis occur in eukaryotic cells. Binary fission occurs in prokaryotic cells. All organisms except bacteria are made up of one or more eukaryotic cells. All bacteria are single prokaryotic cells. Mitosis produces two genetically identical cells. Meiosis produces cells called gametes that contain one-half the genetic information of the original parent cell. Binary fission, like mitosis, also produces two genetically identical cells. Mitosis is the process through which single-celled eukaryotic organisms reproduce, multicellular organisms grow and develop, and new body cells are created.
This biologist is working with bacteria, which are simple single-celled organisms found throughout the soil and water and in nearly all multicellular plants and animals. Among the earliest life forms on Earth, bacteria are much simpler and 1,000 times smaller than other single-celled organisms, such as the paramecium and amoeba. They do not have a nucleus and lack typical cell organelles that perform vital functions in more advanced types of cells. While some bacteria can cause disease, most of these minute organisms are harmless. In fact, many are useful, such as the bacteria that produce yogurt, or cheese, pickles, and other products. Bacteria reproduce very rapidly through a type of asexual reproduction called binary fission. Binary fission comes from Latin words meaning to split into two. In binary fission, cells reproduce by simply dividing in half or splitting into two. Bacteria grow to about twice their normal size before dividing. Then, before splitting in two, the bacterial cell goes through mitosis and makes an exact copy of its chromosome material. The duplicated chromosome moves to a different area of the bacterial cell. A cell wall forms near the center of the parent cell, and the cell then divides. The hereditary material, the chromosomes, and the other cellular material are divided equally between the two cells. Each daughter cell then grows to normal size before it divides. Budding is a slightly different type of asexual reproduction. Binary fission involves equal division of the cytoplasm and chromosomes of a cell, resulting in 2 new cells. In budding, the parent organism divides into 2 unequal parts. The hereditary material, the chromosomes, are divided equally between the cell and the bud, but the other cell material is not. Among the organisms carrying out this form of reproduction are yeast cells. Yeasts belong to a class of plant organisms known as fungi. When a yeast cell begins to bud, the nucleus moves toward the side of the cell. The cell wall there is softened by an enzyme so that it bulges outward and forms a small knob-like bud. The chromosomes in the nucleus then undergo mitosis and form 2 daughter nuclei. One daughter nucleus moves into the bud, while the other remains in the parent cell. A cell wall then forms between the parent cell and the bud. The bud may remain attached to the parent cell, or it can separate from it. In either case, the bud is an independent cell that can increase in size and eventually produce its own buds. Some multicellular organisms can also reproduce by budding. This coral reef, for example, is made up of millions of lime skeletons left from underwater animals that are like sea anemones. These sea animals reproduce by budding, with many generations leaving their remains in the reef. Regeneration, another form of asexual reproduction, is an organism's ability to regrow lost body parts. Think for a moment. What is an example of your body's ability to regrow lost parts? Write a short answer. You have 10 seconds to do this. Your body regenerates cells to repair and heal an injury. If you receive a scrape or cut, your body will gradually regenerate cells to repair the injury. Most of us, though, realize we have a limited regenerative capacity. We know the skin's outer layer is constantly wearing off and being replaced by new skin cells. And we realize a fingernail will grow back. But of course, not the finger. But many animals and all plants have much greater powers of regeneration than humans. For example, if a starfish is divided into 3 sections, each section will grow into a normal, full-sized animal. Or if a salamander loses a leg in an accident, a new one will grow back. Many lower animals, like sponges and worms, can regenerate complete organisms from small pieces of themselves. So regeneration is a means of asexual reproduction that can be seen in different forms in different organisms.
If multicellular organisms only used mitosis to reproduce, all of their offspring would be exactly the same, because their genetic information would be identical. Consequently, there would be no variety in the species. Multicelled organisms, such as plants and animals, reproduce sexually. 2 sex cells, one from the male and one from the female, are fused to make one new cell with half of the genetic material coming from the father and half from the mother. This is called fertilization. With meiosis, a special type of cell division occurs in the reproductive organs of both the male and the female. As in mitosis, the chromosomes replicate themselves, thus doubling the genetic material. Each chromosome now resembles an X shape formed by two sister chromatids. But then something different happens. Each chromosome lines up with its corresponding partner and they exchange genetic material. This is known as crossing over. Now the chromosomes collect in the middle of the cell, and one chromosome from each pair is pulled to opposite ends of the cell. The cell divides in two, both containing half the number of the still attached chromatids. Each of these cells now divides, splitting the chromatids in half. By the end, we have 4 gamete cells, each containing half of the necessary DNA. If these cells were produced by a female organism, the gametes will be the ova or egg. If by a male, the sperm. When fertilization occurs, the egg fuses with the sperm and the 1/2 of the DNA from the mother merges with the 1/2 from the father, making a complete set of chromosomes. Once union has occurred, this single cell then divides through the process of mitosis and grows into an adult. Human beings, for example, begin as one cell and grow to become adults of approximately 100 trillion cells. The incredible number of gene combinations that results from this type of union ensures the genetic diversity of the species and the uniqueness of every individual.
Another form of asexual reproduction is called sporulation, where spores are used to produce new organisms. Mushrooms like these, for example, contain spores on the underside of their umbrella-shaped caps. These spores are small, specialized cells, with each one containing a nucleus, chromosomes, and a thick, hard outer wall. This protective wall enables spores to withstand difficult environmental conditions, such as extreme heat, cold, or dryness. Usually spread by wind, the spores will produce new organisms when weather conditions become favorable. An effective means of asexual reproduction, spore formation is found in various plant organisms, including mosses and ferns. Many plants reproduce by means of seeds, which are produced through a sexual process. But there are many plants that experience asexual reproduction through a process called vegetative propagation. In vegetative propagation, the cells of roots, stems, and leaves of a parent plant grow and divide through mitosis. In places where they happen to touch the soil, a new independent plant develops with the same hereditary characteristics as its parent. Through natural development, vegetative propagation occurs in several ways. Tulips, for example, grow from a bulb, a short underground stem surrounded by leaves containing food. As the tulip grows, small bulbs sprout from the old one, each giving rise to a new plant. Among other plants, onions and lilies reproduce by bulbs. Corms are similar to bulbs, but without leaves. Short, thick underground stems, corms produce such plants as the gladiolus and the water chestnut. Most plant stems grow above ground vertically, like cactus. In some cases, however, the stems store food and grow underground, as with the white potato. Called tubers, such stems have tiny growths that are buds for new plants. Some plants, like strawberries, grow from runners, horizontal stems with buds that grow along the surface of the ground. Where buds from the runner touch the soil, roots, stems, and leaves develop for a new plant. Bulbs, corms, tubers, and runners are all examples of asexual reproduction through natural vegetative propagation. There are also methods of artificial vegetative propagation developed by farmers and gardeners to induce growth of new plants. One of these methods involves cutting a plant's stem, leaf, or root to produce a new individual plant. In this stem cutting, a branch is cut from a plant and placed in water. When roots develop, the cutting becomes an independent plant and is transplanted to soil.